Lucas Arantes built his empire with intelligence and integrity, but when he disguises himself as a driver to test his fiancée's family, he uncovers a betrayal that threatens everything, including his heart. Will love survive the truth? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The morning sun shone through the windows of Lucas Arantes' penthouse. At 45, he stood in front of the mirror adjusting his tie, his salt and pepper, hair perfectly groomed. Unlike many billionaires who flaunted their wealth, Lucas preferred to keep a low profile. His real estate empire had made him one of the richest men in the city, but few people actually knew his face. "Mr. Arantes, your coffee is ready," said Maria, his housekeeper of 15 years. Lucas smiled at her through the mirror. "Thank you, Maria. What would I do without you?" "Probably starve," she joked, placing the cup on his bedside table. "And Miss Clara called. She wanted to remind you about dinner with her family tonight." At the mention of Clara's name, Lucas's smile widened. At 35, Clara Mendez had walked into his life a year ago during a charity event. Unlike the women he'd dated before, she seemed unimpressed by his wealth and more interested in his thoughts on community development. She was a kindergarten teacher who loved children, and her simple approach to life had captured his heart. "I remember," Lucas said, taking a sip of his coffee. "The big family dinner at the Grand Palace. Her parents are celebrating their anniversary." Maria hesitated at the door. "If you don't mind me saying, sir, that family of hers, they're different from you." Lucas raised an eyebrow. "Different how?" "I've been with you long enough to speak my mind." When they visited last month, they couldn't stop looking at everything in this apartment like they were counting the value. Lucas waved his hand dismissively. "Not everyone grows up with money, Maria. It's natural to be impressed." "It wasn't impression I saw in their eyes, sir. It was calculation." Her words lingered in his mind as he drove to his office. Lucas had noticed similar things himself, but had dismissed them as paranoia. Clara's brother, Roberto, always had business proposals for him. Her father, Eduardo, frequently asked about his investment strategies, and her mother, Beatriz, never missed an opportunity to mention how Clara deserved the finer things in life. Still, he loved Clara. She was different from them, wasn't she? At his office, Lucas found his assistant Miguel waiting with a stack of documents. "Morning, boss. You've got the Thompson project meeting at 10 and lunch with the mayor at noon." Lucas nodded, scanning through his emails. One caught his attention, a message from Roberto asking for a small investment of $2 million for a new venture. "Miguel, what do you know about Roberto Mendez's business background?" Miguel frowned. "Your future brother-in-law? Not much beyond what's public. Failed businesses mostly. Nothing that lasted more than a year or two." Lucas leaned back in his chair, a feeling of unease growing in his stomach. "Is something wrong?" Miguel asked. "I'm not sure," Lucas replied, "but I think I need to find out." The idea came to him while he was reviewing his transportation company's records. Arantes Luxury Transport provided high-end vehicles for executives and celebrities. The company was one of his smaller ventures, but it gave him an unexpected opportunity. Lucas picked up his phone and called Clara. "Hi, sweetheart," he said when she answered. "Lucas, I was just thinking about you. Are you excited for tonight?" Her voice sounded genuinely happy, and Lucas felt a pang of guilt for his suspicions. "Actually, that's why I'm calling. There's an emergency at one of my construction sites. I'll still make it to dinner, but I might be running late." "Oh," Clara said, her disappointment evident. "Should I send our driver to pick up my family then?" "No need," Lucas replied. "I've already arranged for one of my best drivers from Arantes. Transport to get them. His name is Luis. He'll take good care of them." After hanging up, Lucas called Miguel to his office. "Cancel my afternoon meetings. I need a baseball cap, sunglasses, and the keys to one of our standard company sedans." Miguel's eyes widened. "Are you going undercover, boss?" "Something like that," Lucas said, "and I need it kept absolutely quiet." At 6 o'clock, Lucas, now dressed in black pants, a white button-up shirt with the company logo, and a baseball cap pulled low over his sunglasses, pulled up in front of the Mendez family home. It was a modest house in a middle-class neighborhood, nothing like his luxury penthouse. He saw them emerge from the front door, Eduardo in his best suit, Beatrice in a glittering dress that looked new and expensive, and Roberto adjusting his flashy watch. Also new, Lucas. Noted. The watch was a brand he had mentioned liking during their last dinner together. "Good evening," Lucas said in a slightly deeper voice than usual. "I'm Luis from Arantes Transport. I'll be your driver tonight." "About time," Roberto said, not even looking at him. "We expected you 10 minutes ago." "Roberto, be nice," Beatrice scolded, though her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Mr. Arantes sent his personal company. We should be grateful." They climbed into the back seat, and Lucas started driving. From the rearview mirror, he could see them settling in, unaware that the man they were discussing was right in front of them. "I told you Clara would come through," Eduardo said, straightening his tie. "A year of dating, and look at how our lives have changed already." Lucas's hands tightened on the steering wheel, but he kept his face neutral. "The jewelry he's bought. Her alone could set us up for months," Beatrice added, lowering her voice. "And did you see this car? His company has dozens like this." Roberto laughed. "Wait until they're married. Clara says his prenup lawyer is retiring next month, and the new one isn't as thorough. Perfect timing." Lucas felt his heart rate quicken. He turned on the radio to seem natural, but kept the volume low enough to hear their conversation. "Speaking of timing," Eduardo said, "how's your investment pitch going? Got those 2 million yet?" "Almost," Roberto replied. "I've sent him a proposal. Once Clara puts in a good word, it's as good as done. And when it fails in 6 months, well, they're business risks, right?" They all laughed, and Lucas felt sick to his stomach. "Clara needs to speed things up," Beatrice said, checking her makeup in a compact mirror. "She keeps saying she wants a long engagement. I told her she's not getting any younger, and neither is he. Lock it down while he's still smitten." "Does she actually love him?" Eduardo asked, and Lucas held his breath for the answer. Beatrice scoffed. "Love doesn't pay bills. Besides, she's always preferred those young, artistic types. Remember that photographer she was crazy about? Diego," Roberto nodded. "She still mentions him sometimes. But she's practical. She knows what's at stake." The car fell silent as they approached a red light. Lucas's mind was racing, processing everything he'd just heard. The family he was about to join was plotting to use him, to take what he'd worked for his entire life. And Clara, was she really part of this scheme? "This traffic is awful," Eduardo complained. "Driver, isn't there a faster route? My future son-in-law is waiting for us." Lucas took a deep breath. Then, in his normal voice, he said, "Actually, he isn't." The car went dead silent. Slowly, Lucas removed his sunglasses and turned to face them. The shock on their faces would have been comical in any other situation. "Lucas!" Beatrice gasped, her hand flying to her throat. "Surprise," he said, his voice cold. "Seems I've learned quite a bit about my future family tonight." Roberto's face paled. "We were just joking around, man. You know how it is." "No, I don't. Know how it is to plan to scam someone who trusted you," Lucas replied. "Or to fake love for financial gain." Eduardo tried to recover. "Now, son, you've misunderstood." "I understand perfectly," Lucas cut him off as he pulled up to the Grand Palace. "The irony is that I would have helped you all if you'd been honest. I've always taken care of the people I love." He unlocked the doors. "Here's your stop. I've already texted Clara to let her know I'm not coming, and neither are you." "What did you tell her?" Beatrice demanded, panic in her eyes. "The truth," Lucas said simply. "That I overheard a conversation that changed everything. She can decide what to do with that information." As they reluctantly exited the car, Roberto turned back. "You're making a mistake. Clara loves you." Lucas looked him directly in the eyes. "For her sake, I hope that's the one truth you've told." Tonight, he drove away, leaving them standing on the curb. His phone buzzed with messages from Clara, but he couldn't bring himself to read them yet. He needed time to think. Back at his penthouse, Lucas poured himself a drink and walked out onto the balcony. The city light sparkled below him, but he felt no joy in the view tonight. "Mr. Arantes," Maria appeared at the doorway. "You're home early. Is everything all right?" Lucas took a long sip of his drink. "No, Maria, but it will be." His phone rang. Again, Clara calling for the 5th time. Finally, he answered. "Lucas, please," she said, her voice breaking. "Whatever my family said, it's not what you think. Then what is it, Clara? Because what I heard was pretty clear. She hesitated. Can we meet? I need to explain in person. Lucas closed his eyes, the pain in her voice cutting through his. Anger. Was she truly innocent in all this, or the best actor of them all? The park bench where we first had ice cream, he said finally. Tomorrow at noon. He hung up before she could respond. As he stood looking out at the city, Lucas wondered if anything in his relationship had been real. Tomorrow he would face Clara and learn the final truth, whether the woman he loved saw him as the man he was, or just the fortune he represented. Summer night stretched long before him, filled with memories now tainted by doubt. By morning he would need to decide. Was this the end of their story, or merely a painful new chapter? Lucas barely slept that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard Roberto's voice talking about investment scams, Beatrice mentioning jewelry that could set them up for months, and Eduardo asking if Clara actually loved him. The question haunted him the most. By morning, dark circles rimmed his eyes. He stood at his kitchen counter, staring at his untouched coffee, when his phone buzzed with a message from Miguel. "Boss, are you coming in today? The Thompson contract. Needs your signature." Lucas texted back, "Working from home, send anything urgent to my email." He couldn't face the office today, not with his personal life in shambles. For a man who prided himself on control, the feeling of having been played was unbearable. At 11:30, Lucas changed into jeans and a simple button-down shirt, the kind of clothes he wore when he and Clara used to walk through the park on Sunday afternoons. No expensive watch, no designer shoes. Today he wanted to be just Lucas, not the billionaire everyone seemed to see. The park was quiet for a weekday. A few mothers pushed strollers along the paths, and an elderly couple fed the ducks by the pond. Lucas found the bench, their bench, and sat down. The memory of Clara's laughter as she dropped ice cream on her blouse during their third date played in his mind. Had that been real, or was she just a very good actress? At exactly noon, he saw her walking toward him. Clara looked different. Today, her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, her face free of makeup, eyes red and puffy from crying. She wore a plain sundress he'd never seen before. "Lucas," she said softly as she approached. He didn't stand to greet her with his usual hug and kiss. "Clara." She sat beside him, leaving space between them, a gap that felt like miles. "Thank you for meeting me," she began, her hands fidgeting in her lap. "I've been up all night thinking about what to say." "The truth would be a good start," Lucas replied, his voice harder than he intended. Clara took a deep breath. "My family said those things. I'm not going to deny it or make excuses for them. What they did, what they planned, was wrong." Lucas studied her face. "And you? What did you plan, Clara?" "That's what I need you to understand," she said, finally meeting his eyes. "I never planned anything. Your mother mentioned jewelry you could sell, pieces I gave you out of love." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "I've never sold anything you've given me. Not once, but yes, my mother has asked me to many times." "And your brother's investment scheme, were you going to put in a good word for him?" She looked down. "Roberto asked me to talk to you about it. I told him I wouldn't pressure you into any business decisions." Lucas scoffed. "How convenient that your answers make you completely innocent." "I'm not innocent," Clara said sharply, surprising him. "I'm guilty of not standing up to them. I'm guilty of ignoring the red flags when they asked inappropriate questions about your money. I'm guilty of being too afraid to tell you that my family has always been obsessed with wealth and status." A jogger passed by their bench, and both fell silent until he was out of earshot. "Your parents mentioned someone named Diego, a photographer you were crazy about," Lucas said quietly. Clara closed her eyes briefly. "Diego and I dated for 3 years. He was passionate, artistic, and completely broke. My parents hated him. We broke up because he got a job offer in Europe, and I wasn't ready to leave my life here." "Do you still love him?" "No," she answered, without hesitation. "That ended years ago." Lucas stood up and walked a few steps away, needing movement to process his thoughts. "How am I supposed to believe anything you say now, Clara?" Your family was plotting to take everything from me. Clara stood too, but didn't approach him. I know. And I'm so sorry for what they said, for what they planned. But Lucas, please believe me when I tell you that I fell in love with you before I knew about your wealth. How is that possible? My name is in the news. My company logos are on buildings across the city. Because I don't read the business section, Clara said with a small, sad smile. The night we met at the charity event, I was filling in for another teacher who got sick. I had no idea who you were. I just thought you were a kind man who actually listened when I talked about my students. Lucas remembered that night, how she'd spoken passionately about the need for better educational resources in underprivileged areas, how she hadn't seemed impressed when he'd offered to make a large donation. It wasn't until our third date that my brother saw us together and told me who you really were, Clara continued. And by then I was already falling for you. And your family, Clara's shoulders slumped. They were thrilled, of course. Suddenly they wanted to hear all about you, meet you, be part of our relationship. I should have seen what was happening. But I was so happy with you that I ignored it. Lucas walked back to the bench and sat down, his head in his hands. I don't know what to believe anymore. Clara sat beside him, closer this time. I understand, and I won't blame you if you can't trust me again. But I need you to know that my love for you is real. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small, velvet box, the engagement ring he had given her 3 months ago. The 3-carat diamond caught the sunlight as she placed it in his hand. I'm giving this back to you, she said, her voice breaking. Lucas looked at the ring, then at her. Why? Because I want you to be sure. If you decide to give it to me again, someday I want it to be without any doubts. The gesture surprised him. It wasn't what someone after his money would do. What about your family? He asked. I stayed up all night talking with them, Clara said, wiping a tear from her cheek. It was the first time I've ever truly stood up to them. I told them they had to apologize to you and mean it, or I would cut them out of my life. And their response? My father and Roberta refused. They said you had humiliated them and they wouldn't beg for forgiveness. She paused. My mother cried. She said she was sorry for what happened, but asked if I was really willing to choose you over my own blood. And are you? Clara looked him directly in the eyes. Yes, because what they did was wrong. And if they can't see that, then maybe they're not the people I thought they were. Lucas felt something shift inside him. The Clara he knew, the woman he had fallen in love with, was someone who valued honesty and integrity. This painful choice she was making aligned with that person. What happens now? He asked. That's up to you, Clara replied. I've taken a leave of absence from work. I thought I might stay with my cousin in Colorado for a while. Give us both some space to think. The thought of her leaving the city made Lucas's chest tighten unexpectedly. Despite everything, the idea of not seeing her hurt. When would you go? My flight is tomorrow morning. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of potential endings hanging between them. I should get going, Clara finally said, standing up. I still have packing to do. Lucas stood too, the ring still in his palm. Clara, wait. She turned, hope and fear mingling in her eyes. I need time to process all of this, he said. But I don't want you to leave town thinking I've made a final decision. What are you saying? I'm saying that I still care about you. And while I don't know if I can trust you or what the future holds for us, I'm not ready to say goodbye. The relief on her face was visible. I understand, and I'll respect whatever you decide, Lucas. I just want you to be happy, even if it's not with me. As she turned to leave, Lucas found himself saying, Let me drive you home. Clara looked surprised. Are you sure? Yes, he said. And for the first time that day, he felt certain about something. The drive to Clara's apartment was quiet, but not uncomfortable. When they arrived, Lucas walked her to the door. Have a safe flight, he said. And Clara, thank you for being honest today. She nodded, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Goodbye, Lucas. He watched her go inside before returning to his car. The ring box felt heavy in his pocket. Back at his penthouse, Lucas found Miguel waiting for him with a stack of contracts. Sorry to ambush you at home, boss, but these really needed your signature, Miguel said, then noticed Lucas's expression. Is everything okay? No, Lucas admitted, but I'm figuring things out. After Miguel left, Lucas called his private investigator, James Wilson. "I need you to look into someone named Diego. He's a photographer who apparently moved to Europe a few years ago. He used to date Clara Mendez." "Any specific information you're looking for?" James asked. Lucas hesitated. "I want to know if they're still in contact, and I want to know more about Clara's financial history. Has she ever shown signs of being after money? Check her bank accounts, credit history, everything." "On it, boss. I'll have a preliminary report by tomorrow." Lucas hung up, feeling slightly guilty for investigating the woman he loved. But he needed facts, not just emotions, to make his decision. The next morning, he found himself driving to the airport. He hadn't planned it, hadn't even fully admitted to himself what he was doing until he was parking in the short-term lot. Inside the terminal, he scanned the departure boards. Clara's flight to Denver was boarding in 20 minutes. He rushed to the gate, not entirely sure what he would say when he saw her, and then she was there, sitting alone by the window, a small carry-on bag at her feet. She looked lost in thought, fragile in a way he'd never seen before. Lucas approached slowly. "Clara?" She looked up, shock registering on her face. "Lucas? What are you doing here?" "I don't know," he admitted, sitting beside her. "I just knew I couldn't let you leave without... His phone rang, interrupting him. It was James. "Sorry, I need to take this," he said to Clara before answering. "What did you find?" "Not much yet on the photographer," James replied. "But about Ms. Mendez, you might want to see this. I'm sending her file to your email now." Lucas opened the email on his phone, Clara watching him with confusion. The attachment was a news article from 5 years ago with the headline, "Local Teacher Donates Inheritance to Children's Hospital." The article showed a younger Clara presenting a check for $250,000 to a hospital administrator. The caption read, "Clara Mendez donates her entire inheritance from her grandmother to the pediatric cancer ward, despite family objections." Lucas looked up from his phone to find Clara watching him. "You were investigating me?" she asked, her voice hurt but not angry. "I needed to know the truth," Lucas replied, feeling ashamed now. "And did you find it?" He showed her the article. "You never told me about this." Clara looked at the photo and smiled sadly. "My grandmother was the only one in my family who wasn't obsessed with money. She taught kindergarten for 40 years, just like me. When she died, she left me her savings. My parents were furious when I donated it." "Why did you?" "Because one of my students had just died of leukemia. Because money should help people, not just sit in a bank. Because it was the right thing to do." She looked at him. "The same reasons you donate to charity, I imagine." The final boarding call for Clara's flight came over the loudspeaker. "That's me," she said, standing and picking up her bag. Lucas stood too, suddenly certain. "Don't go." "What?" "Stay. Give us a chance to figure this out." Clara searched his face. "Are you sure?" "No," Lucas said honestly. "But I know that letting you walk onto that plane would be a mistake." She hesitated, glancing toward the gate where the last passengers were boarding. "What about my family?" she asked. "We'll deal with them together," Lucas promised. "If they can't respect our relationship, then they don't need to be part of it." Clara's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "I was hoping you'd come." "You were?" She nodded. "I've never run away from anything in my life. It didn't feel right to start now." Lucas reached out his hand, and after a moment, Clara took. They walked away from the gate together, neither certain of what came next, but both willing to find out. As they left the airport, Lucas's phone buzzed with another message from James. "Found more on Diego. Still in Paris, married with a child. No contact with Clara for years." Lucas put his phone away without showing Clara. He didn't need the confirmation anymore. Sometimes you had to trust your heart even when your head was full of doubts. Back in the car, Clara looked at him. "What? Now we go home," Lucas said, "and we start rebuilding what was broken." What he didn't say was that home meant something different to him now. It wasn't his penthouse or her apartment. Home was wherever they were together, speaking truth, facing challenges side by side. As they drove away from the airport, Lucas knew there would be difficult conversations ahead. Clara's family wouldn't simply disappear from their lives. Trust wouldn't be restored overnight. But for the first time since he'd heard those devastating words in the car, Lucas felt hope. The truth had nearly torn them apart. Perhaps now it could be the foundation that brought them together, stronger than before. The next few weeks were a delicate dance for Lucas and Clara. They had decided not to rush back into living together. Instead, they started dating again. Simple dinners, walks in the park, and long conversations that often lasted until dawn. It was like rebuilding their relationship from the ground up, but this time with complete honesty between them. Clara had barely spoken to her family since the night of the disastrous dinner. Her father and brother had sent angry messages, accusing her of choosing money over blood. Her mother called daily, alternating between tears and manipulation. "They're not going to change overnight," Clara told Lucas as they sat on his balcony, one evening watching the sunset. "Maybe never." Lucas reached for her hand. "Are you okay with that?" "It hurts," she admitted. "But I'm starting to see them clearly for the first time. How they've always valued money over happiness, appearances over reality." The breeze ruffled her hair, and Lucas tucked a strand behind her ear. "Not everyone is meant to be in our lives. Forever, even family." "I know, but enough about them." Clara smiled, changing the subject. "Tell me about the new community center project. Have you finalized the plans?" Lucas's eyes lit up. One of the things he loved most about Clara was her genuine interest in his work, particularly his charitable projects. "Almost. The architects presented the final designs yesterday. Construction should start next month." "I can't wait to see it," Clara said enthusiastically. "The children in that neighborhood really need a safe place to learn and play." As they talked, Lucas felt the familiar warmth that had first drawn him to Clara. In these quiet moments, he could almost forget the shadow that still hung over them. Almost. The next morning, Lucas was in his office reviewing contracts when his assistant knocked on the door. "Mr. Arantes, there's a Roberto Mendez here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but he's very insistent." Lucas tensed. He hadn't seen Clara's brother since the night in the car. "Send him in." Roberto entered, looking less confident than usual. His designer suit seemed rumpled and dark circles shadowed his eyes. "Lucas, thank you for seeing me." "What do you want, Roberto?" Lucas didn't offer him a seat. Roberto ran a hand through his hair. "I'll get straight to the point. I'm in trouble, serious trouble. Let me guess. You need money." "It's not what you think," Roberto said quickly. "I borrowed from some people. Bad people. I was sure I could pay them back with my next business venture, but the 2 million you were planning to scam from me never materialized." Lucas finished for him. Roberto had the decency to look ashamed. "Look, I know what we did was wrong. The things we said about you, about Clara, it was unforgivable. Yet here you are, asking for forgiveness, or rather, for money. They've threatened. My family, Lucas. Not just me, but my parents too. These aren't people who make empty threats." Lucas studied Roberto, looking for signs of deception. The man was clearly frightened. "How much?" 500,000. I know it's a lot." "It's nothing," Lucas interrupted. "I could write you a check right now and not even notice it's gone." Hope flickered in Roberto's eyes. "So you'll help?" "I didn't say that." Lucas walked around his desk to stand directly in front of Clara's brother. "Why should I? Because despite everything, I'm still Clara's brother. And she loves you." Roberto's voice dropped. "And I think you still love her." Lucas's jaw tightened. "Don't use her name to manipulate me." "I'm not," Roberto insisted. "I'm just saying that if you help us now, maybe there's a chance for healing. For all of us." Lucas considered this. He didn't owe Roberto or his parents anything, but Clara still cared about her family despite their flaws. Their continued estrangement was causing her pain, even if she tried to hide it. "I'll make you a deal," Lucas said finally. "I'll pay off your debt, but not as a gift or a loan." "What then?" "You'll work it off. I have a construction project starting in the poorest neighborhood in the city. It's hard work with long hours. You'll start at the bottom, earning minimum wage, and you'll live on that wage until your debt to me is paid." Roberto's mouth fell open. "That would take years." "Yes, it would. And during that time, you'd learn the value of honest work and what it means to actually earn money." Lucas crossed his arms. Those are my terms. Take them or leave them. After a long moment, Roberto nodded. I'll take them. Good. My security team will deal with your creditors today. You start work tomorrow at 6 a.m. Don't be late. As Roberto turned to leave, Lucas added, And Roberto, Clara doesn't hear about this. Not until I decide it's time. After he was gone, Lucas called Miguel into his office. I need you to set up a meeting with Eduardo and Beatriz Mendez. Today, if possible. Miguel raised an eyebrow but didn't comment. I'll arrange it, boss. Later that afternoon, Lucas sat across from Clara's parents in a private room at his favorite restaurant. Eduardo looked defiant, while Beatriz couldn't quite meet his eyes. I'll be brief, Lucas began. I know about Roberto's situation. I've agreed to help, but he'll be working for me to pay off every cent. You're using his desperation to turn him into your slave, Eduardo accused. I'm giving him the opportunity to learn something valuable, Lucas corrected. Something you clearly never taught him, the connection between work and reward. Beatriz finally looked up. Why did you ask us here? Because I want to be clear about where we stand. I love your daughter. Despite everything, I believe we have a future together. That future can include you, but only on certain conditions. Eduardo scoffed. You're giving us conditions? Yes, first, you will both apologize to Clara for putting her in an impossible position. Second, you will respect our relationship and my role in her life. Third, there will be no more schemes, no more manipulation, and no more discussions about my money. And if we refuse, Eduardo challenged, then you lose your daughter. Because while I won't ask her to cut you out of her life, I will be honest with her about your continued behavior. And Clara has already shown she's willing to make that choice. Eduardo started to protest, but Beatriz laid a hand on his arm. What about Roberto's debt? She asked quietly. As I said, he'll work it off. Honestly, it might do him some good to earn something for a change. Beatriz nodded slowly. And you won't tell Clara about his troubles? Not for now. That's between you and your son. Lucas stood up. Think about what I've said. Clara deserves better from the people who are supposed to love her most. He left them sitting in silence, hoping he'd made the right decision by offering this olive branch. For Clara's sake, he wanted healing for her family, but not at the cost of enabling their behavior. That evening, Lucas invited Clara to his penthouse for dinner. Maria had outdone herself with Clara's favorite meal, and Lucas had set the table on the balcony with candles and flowers. This is beautiful, Clara said, taking in the scene. What's the occasion? Does there need to be one? Lucas pulled out her chair. Clara gave him a knowing look. You've got that expression you get when you're planning something. Lucas smiled. In these past weeks, he'd come to appreciate how well she knew him, his habits, his expressions, his moods. It was both comforting and terrifying to be seen so clearly by another person. I've been thinking, he began after they had started eating, about us, about the future. Clara set down her fork, suddenly serious. And I think it's time we stopped this back and forth, the separate apartments, the careful distance. Lucas reached across the table for her hand. I want you to move. And with me, Clara. Officially this time, her eyes widened. Are you sure? I thought you needed more time. Life is short. These past weeks have shown me that what we have is worth fighting for, worth trusting in. He squeezed her hand. I love you, the real you, not the woman I thought you might be or feared you were. Tears filled Clara's eyes. I love you too. And yes, I want to live with you. Lucas smiled, relief washing over him. But there was more he needed to say. There's something else we need to discuss, your family. Clara's smile faltered. What about them? I saw Roberto today. And your parents. You did what? Clara pulled her hand away. Why wouldn't you tell me that? I'm telling you now, Lucas said calmly. Roberto came to me for help. He's in some financial trouble. Clara closed her eyes briefly. Let me guess. He asked you for money? Yes. But that's not important right now. What matters is that I think there might be a path forward, a way for your family to be part of our lives without the deception and manipulation. How? Clara asked skeptically. Lucas explained his arrangement with Roberto and his conversation with her parents. I'm not asking you to forgive them immediately. I'm just suggesting that we give them the chance to prove they can. Change? Clara was quiet for a long moment. Why would you do this? After everything they said, everything they planned to do to you? Because they're your family. And because holding on to anger only hurts us in the end. Lucas reached for her hand again. But this is your decision. If you're not ready, I understand. Clara looked out at the city lights, considering. My whole life I've wanted them to see me, really see me, not just what I could do for them. I don't know if they're capable of that. Maybe not. But people can surprise you. Look at us. A small smile touched her lips. I'm willing to try if you are. Together then, Lucas said, raising his glass. To second chances. To second chances, Clara echoed, touching her glass to his. Later that night, as they stood together on the balcony, Lucas slipped his arm around Clara's waist. There's one more thing I've been meaning to ask you. Clara leaned against him contentedly. Lucas reached into his pocket and pulled out the ring box, the same one she had returned to him that day in the park. I believe this belongs to you. Clara's breath caught as he opened the box. The diamond caught the moonlight, but it wasn't the same ring. This one was smaller, simpler, with a band of interwoven gold and silver. I had it redesigned, Lucas explained. The old one represented who I thought we were. This one represents who I know we are. Different elements coming together to make something beautiful and strong. Clara touched the ring gently. It's perfect. Is that a yes? Lucas asked, his heart pounding. It's always been yes, Clara whispered. Even when everything was falling apart, it was always yes. As Lucas slipped the ring onto her finger, he felt a sense of rightness that had been missing before. This time, there were no shadows between them, no unspoken truths waiting to be revealed. The next morning, Lucas woke early. Clara was still asleep beside him, her face peaceful in the soft morning light. His phone buzzed with a message from Miguel. Roberto showed up for work, on time. Lucas smiled. It was a small step, but perhaps the beginning of something important. He slipped out of bed quietly and made his way to the kitchen to start the coffee. Maria would be arriving soon, and he wanted to tell her the good news about Clara moving in permanently. As the coffee brewed, Lucas looked out at the city coming to life below. For a man who had built his fortune on seeing the potential in neglected properties, he found it fitting that his greatest happiness had come from seeing the potential in a relationship that others might have discarded at the first sign of trouble. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Clara's family had a long way to go to earn back trust. Their own relationship would face more challenges, but for the first time in his life, Lucas was certain he had found something more valuable than any building or business, a love based on truth. Clara appeared in the doorway, her hair tousled from sleep, the new ring glinting on her finger. Good morning, she said with a smile that warmed him to his core. Good morning, he replied, holding out a cup of coffee for her. As she took it, their fingers brushed, and Lucas knew that whatever came next, they would face it together, with honesty, courage, and love. In that quiet moment, with the morning sun streaming through the windows and Clara's hand in his, Lucas felt a peace he had never known before. The truth that had once threatened to tear them apart had ultimately brought them closer than he had ever imagined possible. 6 months had passed since Lucas and Clara's engagement. The summer heat had given way to autumn crispness, and the city was painted in shades of gold and red. Life had fallen into a comfortable rhythm for the couple. Clara had moved into Lucas's penthouse and resumed teaching at her kindergarten, while Lucas continued managing his business empire. But unlike before, they now shared everything from morning coffee to evening walks to late-night conversations about their hopes and dreams. The wedding was set for spring, a small ceremony with only close friends and family. Clara had insisted they keep it intimate, and Lucas had readily agreed. Neither wanted the spectacle that their original wedding plans had entailed. Clara's family situation had evolved in unexpected ways. Roberto, true to his word, had shown up every day for work at Lucas's construction site. The first month had been rough, blisters on his hands, aching muscles, and the humbling experience of taking orders instead of giving them. But gradually, something changed in Clara's brother. The physical labor and honest earnings seemed to reshape not just his body but his perspective. "He actually apologized to me yesterday," Clara told Lucas one evening as they prepared dinner together. "Not just the superficial, 'I'm sorry you felt hurt' kind of apology. A real one." Lucas raised an eyebrow as he chopped vegetables. "Did he mean it?" "I think he did." Clara stirred the pasta sauce thoughtfully. "He said working on the community center has shown him what it means to build something meaningful instead of just chasing money. People can change when they're given the right opportunity," Lucas said. He had seen it countless times in his business, employees who just needed someone to believe in them. "Speaking of change," Clara said hesitantly, "my mother called again about Thanksgiving dinner." Lucas paused his chopping. Beatrice had been persistently trying to rebuild her relationship with Clara, calling regularly and even volunteering at the kindergarten where Clara taught. Eduardo had been slower to come around, his pride still wounded, but even he had made efforts, attending a few family dinners and asking real questions about Clara's work instead of focusing on Lucas's wealth. "What do you think?" Lucas asked, letting Clara take the lead as he always did with her family. "I think it might be time," she said carefully. "They're trying, Lucas. It's not perfect, and maybe it never will be, but they're trying." Lucas nodded, wiping his hands on a towel before embracing her. "Then we'll go. Together." Clara looked up at him with such love that it still took his breath away sometimes. "Thank you for not giving up on them. On us. Some things are worth fighting for," he said simply. The day before Thanksgiving, Lucas received an unexpected visitor at his office. Eduardo Mendez stood awkwardly in the doorway, looking older and somehow smaller than Lucas remembered. "Mr. Mendez," Lucas said formally, standing to greet him. "This is a surprise. Please, call me Eduardo." He entered the office hesitantly. "I hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all. What can I do for you?" Eduardo took a seat, his hands fidgeting with his hat. "I wanted to speak with you privately before tomorrow's dinner, man to man." Lucas sat back in his chair, curious but wary. "I'm listening." "I owe you an apology," Eduardo said, the words seeming to cost him effort. "What my family and I did, what we planned to do, was wrong. Deeply wrong." Lucas remained silent, allowing the older man to continue. "I've spent my life chasing financial security," Eduardo went on. "Growing up poor marks you in ways that are hard to explain. Every decision I made was about ensuring my family would never experience what I did as a child." "That's understandable," Lucas acknowledged. "Maybe, but somewhere along the way I lost sight of what truly matters." Eduardo looked directly at Lucas. "I've watched my son change these past months. Working at your site has given him something I never could. Purpose, self-respect." "Roberto has surprised me," Lucas admitted. "He's a hard worker when he applies himself. He talks about you, you know, with respect." Eduardo's voice cracked slightly. "And Clara, she's happier than I've ever seen her." Lucas felt his guard lowering. "I want her to be happy. That's all I've ever wanted. I know that now." Eduardo reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. "That's why I brought this." Lucas took the envelope, opening it to find legal documents. As he scanned them, his eyebrows rose in surprise. "This is a prenuptial agreement, protecting Clara's assets from yours." Eduardo nodded. "The opposite of what you probably expected from me. But I want you both to know that this isn't about money anymore. It's about family, real family." Lucas studied the man across from him, searching for signs of deception, but finding only sincerity. "Thank you," he said finally. "This means a lot." "There's something else," Eduardo added. "Beatrice and I have been talking. We want to contribute to the wedding, not financially," he added quickly, seeing Lucas's expression. "But Beatrice would like to help with the arrangements if Clara wants. And I'd be honored to walk my daughter down the aisle, if she'll have me." Lucas felt a lump form in his throat. These were the words Clara had always wanted to hear from her father. "I think she would like that very much." As Eduardo left, Lucas reflected on how much had changed in 6 months. The man who had once plotted to exploit him was now seeking reconciliation. It was a reminder that people were capable of growth when confronted with the truth of their actions. Thanksgiving Day arrived with clear skies and cool temperatures. Lucas and Clara drove to her parents' modest home, bringing wine and dessert. Clara squeezed Lucas's hand nervously as they approached the door. "It's going to be fine," he assured her, though he felt a flutter of anxiety himself. Beatrice opened the door, her face lighting up at the sight of them. "Clara, Lucas, come in, everyone's here already." The small living room was indeed full. Roberto was there with his new girlfriend, Lisa, a hard-working nurse he had met when he sprained his wrist at the construction site. Maria, Lucas's longtime housekeeper, had been invited at Clara's insistence and was chatting comfortably with Eduardo in the corner. Miguel, Lucas's assistant, had come with his wife and young son, and to Clara's surprise, her grandmother's sister, Aunt Elisa, had traveled from Florida for the occasion. "Aunt Elisa," Clara exclaimed, embracing the elderly woman, "I thought you couldn't make it. And miss seeing my favorite niece happy at last?" "Never." She patted Lucas's cheek approvingly. "This one's a keeper, Clara." The atmosphere was warm and genuine, so different from the tense, performative family gatherings Lucas had attended before. As they all settled around the dining table, Eduardo cleared his throat and stood, raising his glass. "Before we eat, I'd like to say something." He looked around the table, his gaze lingering on his children. "Our family has been through some difficult times this year. We've made mistakes, serious ones." His eyes met Lucas's briefly. "But we've also been blessed with the opportunity to make amends, to rebuild what was broken." Beatrice wiped a tear from her eye as Eduardo continued. "Today I'm thankful not for material things, but for second chances, for the lesson that true wealth lies in the people we love and the integrity with which we live our lives." He raised his glass, higher, to family, not just the one we're born into, but the one we choose and the one we build together. "To family," everyone echoed, and Lucas felt Clara's hand slip into his under the table. The meal that followed was filled with laughter and genuine conversation. Lucas watched as Clara reconnected with her father, their heads bent close in quiet discussion. Beatrice showed Lucas family photo albums, sharing stories of Clara's childhood, without any hint of the materialistic focus that had marked their previous interactions. As the evening wound down, Clara found Lucas on the back porch, gazing at the stars. "Hey you," she said, wrapping her arms around him from behind. "What are you doing out here all alone?" Lucas turned to face her, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Just thinking about how differently this day could have gone if I hadn't decided to play driver that night." Clara smiled. "Do you regret it, finding out the truth that way?" "Not for a second," Lucas said firmly. "The truth is, what gave us a real chance." He paused, then added, "Your father came to see me yesterday." "He did? Why didn't you tell me?" "I wanted to see how today went first." Lucas explained Eduardo's visit and the prenuptial agreement he had brought. He also asked about walking you down the aisle. Clara's eyes filled with tears. "And what did you say?" "That it was your decision, but I thought you'd want that." She nodded, unable to speak for a moment. "I never thought we'd get here," she finally said, "that they could change so much. Sometimes people just need to see the consequences of their actions clearly," Lucas replied. "And sometimes they need someone to believe they can be better." Inside the house, someone put on music, and the sounds of a slow romantic song drifted out to them. "May I have this dance, future Mrs. Arantes?" Lucas asked, extending his hand with a smile. Clara stepped into his arms, and they swayed gently under the stars. "You know, when we first met, I thought you were too good to be true," she murmured against his chest. "And I thought you were the most genuine person I'd ever met," Lucas replied. Turns out we were both right. As they danced, Lucas reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From the bitter revelation in a car to this moment of contentment, they had traveled a path of hurt, forgiveness, and healing. The truth had nearly destroyed them, but it had also set them free to build something real and lasting. Spring arrived with a burst of color and promise. The day of the wedding dawned clear and bright, with just enough of a breeze to rustle the cherry blossoms that decorated the garden of Lucas's recently completed community center, the venue they had chosen for their ceremony. In a small room, off the main hall, Clara stood in her simple but elegant white dress, her hair adorned with tiny white flowers. Beatrice adjusted her veil, tears shimmering in her eyes. "You look beautiful, my darling," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Thanks, Mom." Clara turned to embrace her mother. Their relationship had continued to heal in the months since Thanksgiving, with Beatrice making genuine efforts to support Clara's choices rather than impose her own expectations. A knock at the doctor revealed Eduardo, handsome in his tuxedo, his eyes widening at the sight of his daughter as a bride. "It's time," he said softly, offering his arm. As they walked toward the garden where Lucas and their guests waited, Eduardo squeezed Clara's hand. "I'm proud of you, Clara. Not because you're marrying a successful man, but because you've stayed true to yourself through everything." Clara smiled up at him, her heart full. "That means more than you know, Dad." The ceremony was simple and heartfelt. Lucas stood beneath an arch of white roses, his face lighting up as Clara appeared on her father's arm. Their vows were sincere promises of truth, respect, and unwavering love. When Lucas placed the wedding band alongside the engagement ring on Clara's finger, his hands were steady and sure, like the foundation they had built together. At the reception, Roberto surprised everyone by giving a toast that brought tears to many eyes. "When I first met Lucas, I saw him as a means to an end," he admitted openly. "I couldn't have been more wrong. This man has taught me more about integrity, hard work, and real success than anyone I've ever known." He raised his glass to Lucas. "Thank you for not giving up on our family when you had every reason to. And Clara," he turned to his sister, "thank you for always seeing the best in everyone, even when we couldn't see it in ourselves." Later, as they shared their first dance as husband and wife, Lucas held Clara close. "Happy?" he asked, though her radiant smile had already answered the question. "Beyond words," she replied. "Did you ever imagine when you put on that driver's cap that we'd end up here?" Lucas shook his head. "That night I thought I'd lost everything that mattered. Instead, I found what really matters." As they danced, Lucas caught glimpses of their guests, Eduardo and Beatrice watching proudly, Roberto with his arm around Lisa, Maria dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief, and all the friends and chosen family who had supported their journey. Even some of the construction workers from the community center project had been invited, forming an unlikely but genuine connection to Roberto and, by extension, to Lucas's world. The community center itself stood as a symbol of transformation, indeed, a place that had given Roberto purpose, provided Lucas with perspective, and would now serve children much like those Clara taught every day. It seemed fitting that they were celebrating their love in a place built from honesty and hard work. As the evening drew to a close, Lucas and Clara slipped away from the reception to a quiet corner of the garden. The stars had just begun to appear in the darkening sky, reminiscent of that Thanksgiving night on the porch. "So, Mrs. Arantes," Lucas said, pulling her close. "What happens now?" "Now," Clara replied with a smile, "we live our truth together." In that moment, under the stars with the woman he loved in his arms, Lucas knew that the painful revelation he'd experienced that night in the car had been the most valuable journey of his life. It had stripped away pretense and false expectations, leaving only what was real and true between them. The truth had been painful, but it had led them here, to authentic love, to healing, to a future built on mutual respect and genuine connection. It had transformed not just their relationship, but the lives of everyone around them. As Lucas kissed his bride, he thought about how sometimes the darkest moments, the ones that feel like endings, are actually beginnings in disguise. Their story hadn't ended that night when he'd removed his sunglasses and revealed his identity. It had only just begun. And what a beautiful story it was turning out to be. One of truth, redemption, and love that grows stronger through adversity. A story they would continue writing together, one honest day at a time for the rest of their lives. The end.